Hi, I'm Chris Grimm, founder, coach, principal consultant of ARIA Consulting. For 24 years, we've been serving leaders and their teams around the world. This podcast, which I wanted to call The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but is called And Then I, is nothing scripted, nothing fancy. I promise that we'll be talking about successes and failures. It's the gold, I call it, that you find only in real stories with real leaders in real time. With that, I invite you to sit back, soak up the wisdom here of these everyday superheroes. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you to And Then I, our podcast here at ARIA Consulting. I'm Chris Grimm, and I'm thrilled to be coming here at least once a week talking with real leaders about real life. Our goal here is to capture the gold, things that you're not going to get in a training class, you're probably not going to read in a book, and asking leaders to get into the nitty-gritty of lessons learned, things they did well, things that they didn't do well, real life. So I am excited about my guest today. I've known this man for a very long time, Mr. Tim Phillips, founder and CEO of Phillips and Company in Portland, Oregon. And we have so much to talk about. Full transparency, we went to undergraduate together, so we've known each other for a really long time.
Yeah. Well, Chris, it's been 30 some odd years. I've known you longer than I've known my wife, of course. I've known you as long as I've known one of my business partners, James Smith, who was an undergrad with us. And I think you'll appreciate the cultural transformation you've guided us through. Even when you weren't guiding us through it, you were guiding us through it. So
yeah. Oh, great. You mean I'm like your Yoda? I'm with you all the time.
Yeah, I can't give you that much cred because then I got to live with it the rest of my life. So but somewhere between Yoda and maybe Buddha. I don't know, let's just put it there.
Oh, that's great. Okay, but wait, for people who are watching the video of this and audio, you'll appreciate this. It looks like you have green screen, but you're not. Yeah. You are actually in that beautiful place.
Yeah, so I'm so blessed and fortunate to have this beautiful property in Central Oregon. I would normally try to keep it a secret, but everybody knows Bend, Oregon now. And so if you're listening from California or Washington State, you might as well join the rest of us and come on over. We'd love to have you. So no, it's great. It's been beautiful to be here during COVID. And I think I'm going to try to make this a part of the permanent rotation for sure.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Although right. Be careful what you ask for. You just invited more Californians there, and I don't know that your neighbors would be happy about that.
Yeah, no, they're here. All my neighbors are Californians. And of course, Chris, dirty secret, I'm a Californian too. I've just been here 27 years, 28 years.
Yeah, it's great. Look, that leads us into why, outside of you being my friend, someone I admire, and a fabulous leader, today I want to talk about change, but really everybody, Tim won't say this, I think he's too humble, but what Tim has done in his business over the last 25 years, I guess we'll talk about that, is really created a transformation and really sustainably made a major change in your business over time. And really, this is a masterclass. So everybody listening, you want to get paper and pen for this because there's a lot of gold that's going to come out of this. And I know Tim likes to tell this story, but I'm probably going to open up some things that most people wouldn't know or even know to ask you. So can we just start maybe for you giving context about, who Phillips and Company is today, and maybe where we started when you thought you needed to make change and why?
Yeah, I kind of break it down into the pre-Chris Grimm era and the post-Chris Grimm era. Maybe it's no cultural awareness to today cultural awareness. And I think if you just think about, Chris, where you and I came from, it was, Malibu, California, Pepperdine University in the 80s. And so that was a little bit of a mix for me of Animal House and Wall Street. You think about these two movies and I don't want to say that was about Pepperdine because Pepperdine was much deeper than that. But for me, just being in Malibu in the 80s and not really knowing what a culture is and coming from just a modest family into this explosive, rich environment. I didn't know how to pick the pieces and parts of culture I wanted. I didn't even know what culture was. I just wanted to survive. And probably Phillips and Company emerged from work at a big firm and some small firms. And really the big firms back in the 80s were that culture. It's Animal House and Wall Street, the locker room environment. It was transactional. How much can you sell?
Yeah.
And you know, it was just hunt and kill, hunt and kill. And when they got their hands on kind of guys, mostly guys, but some gals like me that were survival oriented, they knew how to, you know, tune us up, hit the phones, and sell transactions, sell product. There was not really this relational mindset in financial services in the 80s. And I think everybody knows the outcome of that poor culture was reflected in the 2000s when Lehman and Bear Stearns and, you know, the culture finally collapsed under the weight of this transactional mindset. And we were lucky you came into our lives to help us convert from a transactional culture of hunt and kill to a relational culture. Probably in 2002 you started, but really got deep into it in 2006, 7, and 8, when we were actually ready to receive your message. You know, we weren't ready to catch your pitch.
It's so true, right? Yeah, look, for people listening, you just said some things too. I want to make sure we clarify it. Yeah, you guys were I don't even know what you call that, right? It was just a stock brokerage or
Yeah, it was a stock brokerage.
Right.
Yeah, it was a stock brokerage. And we used this quote unquote Lehman style approach of calling CEOs and executives, qualifying them, and bringing them high quality stocks. But we really didn't get to know them. We just wanted to sell them stock, you know, blue chip companies. And I built a massive, you know, enterprise, you know, maybe 100 and some odd folks doing that at its peak. But it was exhausting. I mean, you know, that ran its course. You know,
yeah, and just so everybody knows, like I remember, Tim, when you called, which was like you said about 2006, 2000, somewhere around there, and framed for me the change that needed to happen. And you know, for everyone's edification, you know, for any leader who wants to drive change, the reason I call this the masterclass is because Tim really said, I've got to flip this on its head. Here's where the industry is going to go. We have to go from this transactional culture to something more elegant and connected to our customers. And we want long-term loyal relationships. And it literally, for most of your business, was a flip, right? Like it was completely the opposite. And that's a big deal, right? Like all of you out there, if you think about any business, you know, if anybody walks into a boardroom and says, we have to do the opposite of what we're doing today, it's a big deal, right? The implications of it, you don't even know when you're saying it, what that actually means. I mean, some leaders kind of do, but the market was going there, right? Like you didn't just make that up. You could see it coming.
We saw it coming and we tried to do it in the transactional mindset, Chris. We said, let's add relational products, but I couldn't get the firm to present those products in a relational way. They would take those things, those tools, and continue to pitch it in a transactional mindset. They would take a portfolio and pitch the portfolio without getting to know the client. They would take a mutual fund and pitch the mutual fund, but not go deep. And I probably spent 2 years from 2002, post 9/11, to 2004, kind of saying, this isn't working. And I'm fighting internally and I'm gaining no traction. And I think, Chris, you called it, Tim, you're like spinning these plates in all these different rooms. And I was exhausted. And then I'd read about kind of culture breakdown, but I didn't know what culture was. I mean, it's like being an athlete that comes to the basketball court, but doesn't really know anything other than how to play the game that way. And so for me, I was making substantial income. The clients were doing okay, but the internal team, I was losing these great people, some today that I wish I was able to keep. And I had
I
to make
remember
that
the
change.
turnover. Yeah, the turnover
Yeah, I
was,
mean, my
and also behaviorally, I think, I think back to the first time you asked me to actually come there and just witness what was happening. And I had interviewed a few of your leaders. So do you remember that?
I
And
do. It's a
everybody had
painful
told me
time
a
to talk about.
story. Yeah, it is painful. And you were really brave, by the way, in doing that, because everybody was like, Tim's really mad all the time. Um,
Yeah.
Everybody else, there was like frustration because you had tried some things that didn't work. I think you and the leaders who were keyed into where the industry were going were concerned that you were going to miss the window of opportunity.
Yeah.
And then because I think some of the, more surface area changes or product changes you were talking about weren't really working, or, that people were scared,
Yeah. We all were right.
right? Your turnover was high. I remember that.
Yes. Very high.
I remember the turnover thing. And just so I can also paint a picture, everybody, like it really was a locker room. God love these people. I really, and still to this day, I adore some of the people who work with you, a lot of them. But at that time, wow, I remember walking in and going, oh, this is what Wall Street is like. And not a lot of women. You did have some women
Yeah. Some.
who were in that culture. Yeah, so let's talk about it, because we had to do something fairly invasive. This is why I call this the master class, everyone, and I wanted Tim to talk about it, because Tim and his leaders agreed to something that was super courageous and maybe way harder than you even knew it was going to
Yeah.
be, which is why I always tell this story and say, one, I felt honored and privileged that you agreed to allow me help you do that. And full disclosure, everybody, we said we went to undergrad together. So Tim and I knew each other well. And I think that trust was helpful
Yeah.
because
No, it was the key, Chris. I mean, it was like I had these young kids, I had a marriage, I needed to make money, and I had a productive machine in terms of money making, but not productive in terms of sustainability and not in terms of like alignment with my true self, right? I got into it. I had a key partner or a key person that was helping me build it and did a beautiful job building this because we both fundamentally had that cultural mindset. And yet
yeah,
um, its time was limited. And more importantly, I was unhappy. And when you say I was mad, it was really like this like no alignment, no internal integration, which creates that
mhm,
frustration. No matter what people could do or say, I was just unhappy with the way the business was going. And really, the money wasn't the issue. I had to make what you called that full commitment move,
yeah,
where I think you described it as like you're
yeah,
holding on to the rock and then you have to leave and
that's
grab
right.
on to something else.
Yep.
And Chris, I had to trust you. I mean, I didn't have any clue what the something else was other than maybe a little bit of a vision. And then you came up with this hocus pocus about culture. Like, culture?
It's true. I remember you guys kind of going, okay. But look, let's talk about this and unwind it for people, because when I say invasive, there are a few things, and you can talk about any or all or none of these, but to me, there's a few things that you and your leaders agreed to that I knew you wanted to do the work, right? Like I knew it would, whether it was desperation or whatever, I knew you were ready to do the work. I knew you and your team were ready to do the work. The first reason I knew is because you were able to articulate, even though you didn't have consultant language, that there was misalignment, right? That the old world and the new world were so significantly different that even though you didn't know what you were leaping to, you knew that it was fundamental, right? Like we've got to go to values, like we've got to look deep, deep, deep. And you were willing to do that personally, which was a big deal. Like that's one thing that is a big deal. Let me give you the other two and you can decide where you want to go. The other thing is that you modeled for everyone from day number one that you were going to be open to feedback and vulnerable about behavior that wasn't working. So you came out and talked about behavior. So values, behavior. And then I think the third thing, which I think is a critical piece of this conversation, was that this was a culture shift and a business model shift. And I don't know which one was scarier to everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Great question. Which one was scarier, right?
Right, because of course the business for most people is the most tangible part of it. But all of it is equal. So I don't know where you want to go from there, but I just want you to recognize that, right?
Yeah, Chris, it's great. Because at the time of change, when I called you and said, hey, I've got to do something different, the only thing I knew was making money. And I had a tremendous client base. I mean, we had thousands, maybe 10,000 clients across the country.
Right.
And it wasn't a small little enterprise. And so, what I knew was I know I'm going to have to take a risk with income, profit, and this maybe unsustainable model. And you said, look, Tim, you're tired. How about we start with culture? And literally, like you said, I thought we were going to sit around and burn incense and hold hands and chant. I mean, I was like, culture, what's culture? Like, I don't even know what that means in 2004, 2000. And then you kind of took us through this incredible, we had to trust you because we didn't know what it means. And you had to help me work as a leader to identify things in me. I love when my kids still use your terms because you coached my family a little bit. Pink chainsaw.
That's right.
That's a hard term. Like, I would be nice, but want to coach people in a biting way. It'd be nice, but it was a pink chainsaw. It wasn't constructive because I was still trying to hold on to the past. And I had to kind of let it all go and model. As you always said, Tim, leaders drive culture, cultures drive relationships. That's right. And relationships will lead to your outcomes.
Yeah. Nice. That.
Yeah.
You covered all that. Go, Tim.
Yeah. So we had to get into it. We did culture stuff. We did culture committees. You gave us these deep survey work that we loved. I had a 360 feedback that was like, I had to shut my door and like cry. It was like, oh my gosh, that's who I appear to be. But I got to tell you, we were ahead of Wall Street. We were ahead of a lot of places that kind of had to face their come up during the financial crisis. We survived because you helped us put culture in place. Mm-hmm. Things like a mission, like improving people's lives and financial strength. Our mission. Our vision we were struggling with, but our vision today is just to be excellent at our mission. I mean, if we can always improve our mission, it's great. Things like collaboration, teamwork, accountability, transparency. That's right. Now, what you told us was we're not going to add loyalty. Everybody at the firm had this deep loyalty value, but you were smart. You helped us identify another source of internal pain, which was loyalty versus duty.
That's right.
And that's always an internal burn. When you're loyal to your people and they're loyal to you, but they don't do their job, it clashes with duty to the client. So you helped me manage through culture, and now our clients have this, what they don't really buy, they know they're buying a cultural platform that everything we do is based on the culture you help us with. They're not buying a product. They're not buying a set of advice. They're not buying a fee. They're not buying a pie chart but they're buying a platform of culture that's a real differentiator from what I believe is still out there, which is, big firms have to put shareholders first, not clients first. Big firms have to meet multiple constituents. The only constituent we have to sustain is our culture. And if it's good enough for us, it's going to be excellent for clients. And I think that was the post Grimm work with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just said it was beautiful, actually, the way you just talked about that. And for everybody listening or watching, I just want to break something down and maybe have Tim go nitty gritty a little bit. And what I mean by that is lots of places say they work on culture. The reason I call this the masterclass, Tim, is that you guys bought and did it, right? Like you said, oh, wait a minute, Chris, we get what you're saying. If you pick a values word and we say transparency, we can't just paint it on the wall or put it on our website unless it's going to translate into our everyday behavior and practices. And so for everybody listening, doing that can be painful, but it's super duper important. And when you are, when you're making a slight change, you can do this, fairly easily. When you're making a transformational change, the way Tim did with his team, and sustain a whole new business, new relationships with every stakeholder, all stakeholder groups, new relationships, you actually can't miss anything, right? Because if you do, it will be inconsistent and it will be incongruent, and your customers will know it, your employees know it first, of course, but everybody knows it. So what Tim's saying this is not something light, right? Because you guys took the time. When he said committees, he's not joking. We had groups of employees that took hours and hours looking at, okay, wait a minute, if we're going to say this is a value of ours, and the values came from Tim and the leaders taking an actual assessment that we went through and worked very hard to define them, right? But there were like battles, good debate over, oh, okay, well, we know what transparency should look like. Can we actually do that? Right? Is everybody willing to buy new behavior and practice when, like I was saying, everybody just a few minutes ago, they literally turned it on its head. Like we turned the business opposite from what it was before. So almost everything had to change.
Yeah. So Chris, like even on the transparency value that we installed, the easy one is that I never shared any performance data pre-cultural change. And like, I wasn't even in the room where you're doing this deep work with the team. And, they came back and says, we want to see how the company's doing. We want to know what we pay our CEO, me. We want to know these things. And I sat there and argued with you. I must be for days like, what is this? Like, this is not the Wall Street I know. And so now, and I made stories up, right? Like if you don't have real data or trust, you had to work us through like, hey, yes, it's possible that people are offended by what you make, or it's possible they're going to ask for more money, or it's possible they're just going to quit. But even if they do, are they the right people to be at this firm and for the change you want? And I guess that's a segue into saying what was really painful is that we lost people. I don't want to say good people, bad people. That's not it. We just lost people we cared about, but we'd go to dinner with, or we'd go have a cocktail with, or we'd play sports with. And some were perfectly aligned to the culture, but it was a lot of transition. And some were never going to align. And we would try and try and try. And you were great. You're like, hey, guys, try all you want, but you've done the survey work. You did the work. You're clear and transparent about who you want to be. And we're going to lose a lot of people. And I hope they're all doing great out there. And I will tell you, the team we have now, I've had for 20 some odd years. Some of them we're celebrating their 25th year that could go through the pre-culture and post-culture era. And by the way, they're the culture cops. I don't have to manage the day-to-day. I have to listen for cultural challenges and coach to that, because the team comes together and holds each other accountable to the culture. And I'm probably still one of the ones they got to call out, like, hey, Tim, we got to do this differently.
100%. I was actually waiting for you to say that, because I thought maybe I should say that.
No.
It's completely true. Your people own this. They live and breathe it now.
Guys like Michael Goodrich, Scott Edwards, George McDonald, all these folks will pull me aside and say, hey, we have got to keep pushing you to push us to be better. And I really
Yeah.
respect that. And now the firm's as strong as ever, bigger than ever, serving our mission to more people than ever. And
Mhm.
it's well over the into the maybe nearing 20,000 folks across the platform with the different things we do. So, it worked out incredibly well. And we're still super mindful of how we make it sustainable for our clients. So fees
Mhm.
are low, advice is rich. I kind of call it high touch, low cost.
Yeah.
So clients get that high touch and low cost, and our mission calls us to do that. So it's been a great journey. But I think one of the things we had to learn, Chris, was what the word enough meant. Like, what's enough?
Mm.
You know? So that was always a part of our nomenclature, is like, if we have enough, let's make it work always for our clients.
What, when you look back on all of the transformation and change, do you have any regrets, or do you have things you think we should have done different?
Yeah, it's sooner rather than later. I think about all the time, think about some of the great people I recruited, that not I, but the team recruited in the old culture days that left.
Mm.
I can remember their names. I mean, we could have been so powerful. We're really we punch way above our size and weight. But had we had those folks here with us today, it would be an even more powerful mission driven firm, because they knew our culture before we knew our culture. And they were so courageous to say, nah, I'm not going to be here. It's not the right culture to work in. And so that's always a big regret. Kind of the challenge in change is you're going to hurt feelings.
Yeah.
Because if you base your business on loyalty, when you change, it looks on the surface disloyal, right? You're
Yeah.
not loyal anymore. You're not, why are you changing? I can't fit that. That's not who I am. And you're being disloyal to me, and yet I'm loyal to you.
Mhm.
That the fact that they were hurt through the change process, is always unfortunate. But that's part of what change brings when you're trying to change culture.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. And yeah, let's just stop here for a second, because this is super important for everybody who's listening and watching, right? A really common thing that happens, and there are models out there that talk about this. One is Bridges transition model, and anybody who wants that, I taught that to them, but on our website, ariacoach.com, in the free downloads, it's in there. And if it's not, I'll make sure it gets put in there. But Bridges model talks about this, right? Like, and that some of your people will resist from the start, right? Phase one of change is an ending, right? It's when you say to everybody, we're not doing this anymore. And so some people's brains, they get mad, other people deny. There's a whole bunch of psychological reactions. It's actually funny. I say to leaders, if you remember, Tim, I said this to you, I need more people to be mad sooner.
Yeah.
More people we engage in this conversation, and the sooner we get them to the reality of the change, the better. Because what you just said is what actually happens most of the time, which is people are kind of in denial about what's happening. And many people, specifically the ones that are the most loyal, will just say yes to what you're asking them to do. And most of the time when you're doing culture change, the culture change meetings are fun,
Yeah,
right? They're
right. They're fun.
exciting. We're doing fun work. We're talking about the future. We're trying to grow the business. There's a lot of like excitement in the new conversation. That doesn't actually mean they can change their behavior enough to execute the new culture later.
Right. Right.
Right. So it's interesting what you say, that there were definitely people who, like, they had to get feedback that they weren't cutting it.
Right. Very hard.
But they
Very hard.
wanted to, right? Like, they were coming to the meetings, they were saying the right things, they were trying to do the right things.
They
I really
they they
believe
were.
that, by the way.
I do. I think they even said, I'm trying to practice this new culture. And I really felt that the people that said that were being sincere, and transparent about, I may not make it. I may
Okay.
give up a very large income and have to make a change. And so that was really, really hard to go through that process. And I got to tell you, the tools that really helped us. I mean, you know, Phillips and Company. It should be Company and Phillips. It just doesn't sound so good, because the tools you gave Company, the team, things like DISC, and I'm not sure if I can mention product specific stuff on your podcast.
Fine.
DISC was great. You had this thing called the wheel that let us objectively examine issues, thoughts, behavior, or reactions, and what I want for you and me. That wheel was super powerful. We could have high stakes conversations without spite talk. We could have straight talk. And then I think that the book Play to Win, and that's been transformational in a business where we don't control the outcomes. We can't control returns in markets. We can't control decisions people make about who they're going to go with and they're not. But we can control what we put in, and we can control our attitude about those outcomes. Like, hey, all I can do is learn and grow. And that changed the mindset. So now we can make presentations and approach our work without this mindset of I'm a winner or loser. If I don't win a business, or if I lose a business. Now it's, hey, are we learning and growing? And that really, in a high performance organization, allows people to free up to play to win. We're not going to win. We're just going to play to win, learn and grow.
Yeah, look, this is, I'm so glad you mentioned Play to Win. Play to Win is a book, everybody, by a man named Larry Wilson and his son Hirsch. Really powerful. Great book. But the really important thing Tim just said, that I want everybody to really get the gravity of it, because everybody listening or watching has some version of this story, right? You have relationships with people, whether it's at work or at home, it's the same, right? You got peeps around you, you have habitual ways of behaving. And one of the habitual ways of behaving that Tim and his team had back in the day was kind of this high testosterone, lots of, kind of like, I wouldn't say volatile, maybe a little volatile, but, there was a lot of energy and a lot of conflict and a lot of kind of, jabbing at each other. So you guys, when I say locker room behavior, that's what I mean. Like, it wasn't healthy conflict most of the time. It wasn't, like you're saying, Tim, straight talk, which is why I brought some of those tools, because I was like, oh, we have to rewire the way you talk to each other, because the way you talk to each other is loaded. Like it feels like it provides a lot of opportunity for people to hide or lie or withhold or whatever. And that's not just the culture you guys had. That lives in a lot of places, which is why I'm calling it out.
Yeah, that's a Wall Street mindset kind of thing. And I think that we did a lot of triangulating. Like, well, Bob said this, that's how he feels. And we would speak for other people. You would have people come into my office and be sent there by another leader to try to convince me. It was just a mess. And we just needed to, we didn't even know it was a mess. We just thought that's the way the world was.
That's right.
It's like, and so I think that what you did is you helped us identify some of these behaviors and, as you called it, unpack the closet. We'd get everything out on the open. Ooh, messy. And by the way, a lot of kudos to my bride, Kristen Phillips, for watching that closet get unpacked.
Yes.
That's when you go home and your closet, your corporation's unpacked, it's all on the table, and you're like, wow, this is really ugly. That behavior is ugly. This is painful. Wow, I'm part of that. And then you helped us build new skills, Play to Win, really the wheel and DISC, and we put things back in the right order. And then we focused on culture. It was really powerful. It was a powerful, sustainable model. And really, Chris, to your credit, Phillips and Company serves these thousands and thousands of clients from a cultural platform. Like, It's not like, hey, how many checking accounts we can open, or,
Yeah.
you know, how many different products we can sell and get incentives for. It's how are we meeting our mission? And
Mhm.
that's what we measure today. And we put that into real work. And we focus on that because of the work you and I did together, but with your with your team's guidance, which was really deep.
Look, oh, no, I couldn't even have paid you to say the better thing just now. And by the way, he's given me a lot of credit, everybody. They did the hard work. I was the conductor of an orchestra for a little while. You guys did it. But you just said something important that I want everybody to kind of get, right? You changed your business metrics. Right. So
Yeah.
Tim just said it. They went from a transactional business. And so everybody out there, when you think about change, or if you're in an organization that's trying to make change and you wonder why it's not working, well, one of the reasons it could not be working potentially is that your metrics might be wrong, right? So if you keep the old metrics, but try to build a new culture and a new business using old metrics, it will not work. And I say that, and it sounds like it should be obvious, but right, Tim, it's not,
No, it's
because
not.
you've got a business that you're running. So, people don't start to realize what Tim said is super important. He and his team put in new metrics for the culture they wanted.
Yes.
And that's not easy to do, right? But it's critical.
Yeah. You get what you measure. And the hardest part at this stage of culture driving the relationships is some things that are really important are really hard to measure. You just have to kind of have a feel. It's like standing in a river and fly fishing. I do a lot of, sometimes you just have to feel the water, feel the pressure, feel the temperature, kind of, use your senses to feel what's going on. Because again, what I've learned through this process is, measuring retention is really important for culture versus profit. Like profit's just such a down the road, it's almost boring to talk about. Measuring retention, employee retention, employee happiness, and client retention. But there's a depth to that relationship. Are they engaging in, for us, are they engaging in the new content? Are they learning and growing with us? Are they touching the podcast? Are they touching the thought leadership? Those are really important things. Are they reading the blog? Are they reading the look ahead? And you can go on the website, Phillips and Company, phillipsandco.com, to see the content, because it's free for everybody. We want to share all of that with as many people as possible, and hope you reshare it for free so that people can see how we think and grow.
The fact that you said measuring profit, the lagging indicator, is like, I think you just said it was boring.
Yeah, it's not really, I mean, like, I get a lot of your clients, a lot of people here say, hey, that's the number one KPI.
It's true.
And the beautiful thing about my world is I only have my clients and my partners to be accountable for. And so there has to be a fair profit, because without profit, there's no sustainability, but it has to be fair. And I get to balance cost for my clients,
Yeah.
sustainable income for my partners, employees, and profit for the shareholders. And I can do it because I'm aligned with my team. There's got to be enough, Chris. And you're just not going to get that with the big firms, because they don't get paid to call.
Like it's all the values and the way they manifest in real life are different.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. Now, I'm never going to fly, in a corporate jet that has, a big GS on it. It's just not going to happen. But, it's enough. Like, this is enough. This is enough to sustain me and my family, and really align. And by the way, I'm going to tell you, when I say it should be and Co and Phillips, it's my partners and employees that make it happen, that live the culture and values. I'm almost just a follower now, because we agree on those. And when we misbehave or have an argument, we come together and try to sort it out.
Yeah, look, it's something we've been teaching more and more. The old model was always the organization lives in the shadow of the leaders. Right. And what I see, Tim, is that for the organizations, I don't care how big or small they are, actually, the more they do the work that you all are committed to, it turns on its head. Like you're saying, it becomes that the organization actually lives in the shadow of the greater employee base. When everyone is driving culture through their behavior every day, you're not beholden to the culture that's set by only 1 or 2 or 5 or 20 leaders. Right. And the behavior of leaders. And it's interesting because everything that's happened in the last few years, everything from Me Too to every movement we had where people's bad behavior was brought to light, or even questionable, to me, that should be all the goal, right? Like, so, your culture should be driven by the majority of your employees instead of always being dependent on a few, because when something goes wrong with the few.
Yeah, and I think that when it's not that way, it's just another plate. It's like plate spinning. How many plates can I keep going? And now just add culture to that. When they lift in culture, man, my job is super easy. And by the way, COVID was no problem, because although I would say we lack, the other tool you gave us was Rockefeller Habits, which we loved as a business book.
Really
and
great.
Being together, and Zoom is really difficult to go deep with somebody. How are your kids? How's your partner? What's going on with you? But when you break bread, which you encourage us in that business process, that's the part that we've had to guard against. It's fine to have a Zoom wine meeting once or twice, but we have got to, our work has always been remote. Our clients, we're wherever our clients want us, but we got to get back and do our celebrations together. We got to break bread together, just so we can be together. And that's the part. Now we can break huddle and go out and do our work, but we got to get back together to build that culture and to support that culture for sure.
Yeah, I think that's true. I know that we're running out of time. So maybe I would just ask you, if you were going to mentor all the amazing people who are listening or watching, and, they were having the moment that you had back in 2006, right?
Yeah.
A very clear understanding that something in their business or on their team needed to flip, right? Like this can't stay like this anymore. I have to make real change. What's your advice to them? What do they do?
So first thing is, you got to get your oxygen mask on first and get ready, because it's painful. I think the second thing is really just breathe a lot, exercise a lot, get yourself in a space where you can lovingly detach. And I say that because you need objectivity, because you're not only the product, but you're also the part of the guide to the process. So you're in the mix, but you have to stand above the fray and say, is it heading in the right direction? Very hard to do, particularly if your livelihood, if you're in a big corporation, can you bring the organization with you or not? Can you keep the profit model in place while you do this? These are all hard things, maybe even harder than what I had to do, because I wasn't willing, but I had no choice. I had to sacrifice the security of income to make the move, and get a great partner you can trust. I mean, trust is at the core of this. I am really honored my partners trusted me to go through that process, as well as my spouse. I mean, we had to go through it together, and that was no easy bargain for the 18 months to 2 years of hard culture change. And it's fun, Chris. We're watching Pepperdine with the new president kind of go through this. And I want to give him a plug, because he's such a great culture guy, but he's sorting out a huge organization. And everywhere. I love being on that board and watching him negotiate a real deep culture change in society, in the academy. I mean, it's a great, fun observation point. Boy, I don't want to be him at all.
Right. Look, it's so true. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's fascinating to me. First of all, yes, any change like that and leadership change kind of brings this regardless. But 2020 rocked a lot of people's boats, right? Like every industry has been touched by this in so many ways. And I mean, that's actually one of the reasons I wanted the podcast, and we're setting up the resources that we're putting together, because I feel like the need is so great. And like I was saying, you can't read a book. If you wrote a book today about the transformation of Phillips and Company, I just don't know that without people listening to you really get into stories that they can understand. Like you said, this is hard,
Yeah, painful, tough
right?
work.
Well, and meaningful. And everybody, what Tim said is also important to the masterclass, which is you went through so much personal transformation. Of course your family was going to notice. Like
Yeah,
this was big. Like it was almost like losing 400 pounds, or like it was major.
yeah, it's hard. I mean, and again, to your formula, Chris, leadership drives culture. Culture doesn't drive leadership.
Right.
And that means us as leaders have to know ourselves deep enough and in a rich way to say, these are the areas I have to change. If I change those things within myself, it will be reflected in culture, it will be reflected in other relationships, and it will be reflected in the outcomes we have. And I think that's why 99.9% of our clients we retain. We don't even we retention's almost ridiculous to measure, because we just don't lose clients because our culture supports them. And a lot of that credit is to you, Chris. I know you're giving me a lot of credit as a leader. I got to tell you, we trusted you blindly to do this work.
Yeah.
And there are times today where I pick up the phone and say, Chris, I'm really struggling with Pepperdine culture or relational culture, and you can help me step back and think about it. And of course, I love it today because I don't have to pay you to do it. It's just all freebies.
Isn't that true? No, it's so good. Look, the awareness is critical. And I know we have to wind down, but I want to say to everyone, the wisdom that you're bringing now to leadership, Tim, is it's a lot, and it's great. And I can only imagine that, like on Pepperdine's board, for instance, you've got a lot of experience and a lot of leaders, but not all of them have lived through what you've done.
Yeah, I'm not sure they know what I've lived through, but I think after they see this, maybe I'm out, but maybe I'm in. But the good news is if I'm out, it's because the culture is there. And if I'm in, it's because they want to buy into a culture mindset. And I know our chair is a culture warrior for sure.
Yeah,
And so
for
is
sure.
Jim. So I think I'll be okay.
I think so too. And I'm hugely grateful for this. And I just want to say thank you for being willing to do this, to talk about the story. And I know everybody who watches and listens is going to also be grateful. So.
Well, it's my pleasure. We owe you our livelihood and our health. So Chris, it's always an honor to be with you. 35 years later, we're still going strong, my friend.
Yep, that's great. Okay, well then I'm going to say thank you to everybody who listened and are watching. Always come back. We've got lots of great leaders, and maybe I'll have Tim back again. Maybe Tim and James next time. I was thinking that maybe, would that be awesome? James is like Tim's number two. Some people would say he's really the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. He's the wizard behind the curtain doing all this.
Okay, James Smith, I'm coming for you. And with that, I'll just say thanks, everybody, and we'll hear you next time. You'll hear us next time. Okay, bye.